Everybody knows Simgot at this point of time. I was quite blown away from the technicalities made available through the EA500 a while back, while I lamented that they were a bit too sparkly. So they took that feedback and later released the EA500LM and changed the sparkliness to something that is a lot more acceptable and now provides class-leading technicalities with a more agreeable tone. Today, we take a look at the EM10, which was codenamed Dream, and this is their reference grade IEM. Now, starting off with case candies. The box of the EM10 is impressive and done with lots of flair. At the top, you have Simgot's tag phrase, "Salute to the art and science," done extremely tastefully. On the side of the box, you get a swirly whirly pattern that states Dream on it with the driver configuration, which we'll talk about in a bit. Opening the box, you then get to see a card that has all the signatures of the people working on the EM10. A nice touch to credit the people behind the scenes. Next up, you're then greeted by the monochromatic faceplates of the EM10. The cable follows in the chamber below, and lastly, the carrying case that has two sets of ear tips as well as the interchangeable plugs for the cables. Next up, build quality. Chassis-wise, the EM10 is made via 3D printing with extensive post-processing. This results in a beautifully glossy chassis. In terms of color, in normal light they appear as black, but when you backlit them, they have a translucent brownish color to them. I found the chassis to be pleasingly comfortable. It sat in my ears for quite a few hours and did not annoy my ears one bit. Quite a delight for longer listening sessions. On the chassis itself, you get a print of the model name and the driver configuration if you forgot what they are. Inside the chassis of the EM10 features an exquisite combination of one dynamic driver plus 8 balance armatures plus one piezoelectric ceramic driver. Talking about this a little bit deeper, an 8mm dynamic driver is used here for bass response. 8 balance armatures were specifically chosen to feel out the mid-range and treble. Lastly, the piezoelectric ceramic driver is then utilized to complete the ultra top end. All these drivers work in unison through the use of a 4-way crossover, enabling the drivers to work in their optimal zones and to avoid added distortion. Faceplate-wise, the EM10 features the word Dream on both the left and right. What might be more apparent to you is that the EM10 does feature different color faceplate on each channel. I kinda like this as it allows you to know which is left and right quicker. On the left, you have an anodized silver, while the right is anodized black. This asymmetry left quite an impression to me, as I can easily remember how the EM10 looks. The chassis also features a flushed 2-pin, which makes it easy for folks who like to cable roll to cable roll. Next up, talking about cable, the EM10 provides a LITS oxygen-free copper cable that is silver-plated. I found that the cable to be quite straightforward to manage. It feels quite solid. My only knock against the cable would be that they chose to continue their use of a friction-based system for their interchangeable plug system, which will get loose if you change your connection too often. Next up, sound. Sonically, the Simgot packed the EM10 quite differently from what they did with the EA500LM, the EA1000, where those feature an elevated upper mids with excellent resolution and technicalities for the price. They did sound a little leaner when it comes to tonality. The EM10, on the other hand, focuses on being more dynamic sounding, emphasizing sub-bass and mid-bass. Mid-bass here is slightly scooped, but still leaves plenty to provide a deliciously thumpy mid-bass, which is missing from many recent earphones. The EM10 also leans warmer compared to others in the Simgot brand. It's still not a full all-out warm IEM, but leans closer to that than other Simgot IEM has ever been. I like their restrained approach, as going all out to the warm side usually causes technicality to suffer. Simgot took a measured approach to the tuning of the EM10, and this results in a lovely blend of tone and technicalities. Bass. Resonant, dynamic, and high resolution is what I would use to describe the bass churned by the 8mm dynamic driver on the EM10. The thing that I noticed the most was how present the bass is on the EM10. It adds a lot of dynamic texture. Sometimes with earphones that feature a scooped out mid-bass section, you can still hear the pulses in the music, but not to the extent of feeling them. The EM10 manages to let you feel these beats from the bass drum very vividly, and this adds to the perception of dynamics. I like how the EM10 blends sub-bass and mid-bass and results in a very full texture that has lots of control as well. There is just a tiny bit of scoop on the mid-bass, but it does not take away from the character of the mid-bass. Resolution here is spectacular, transients on the whole is fast, but it still leaves room for a very well-controlled decay. Mid-range tonal weight of the EM10 is still natural warm, but this time around it leans warmer. This is quite a departure from the EA500LM and EA1000, which is considerably leaner by comparison. Mid-range rendered by the EM10 is spectacular on both male and female vocals. Male vocals sounding fantastic. It's not all that common as many IEMs render them without much gravitas, but on the EM10, male vocals sound absolutely gloriously full. Female vocals here still have the beautiful focus tone to them, but with warmer overtones. It is actually quite different from what you expect on the EA1000, but it is pretty in its own way. When listening to instruments, for me, I do wish that there was a little bit more bite, as this will help you listen to the articulation of instruments a little bit better. You won't really notice this too much unless you are listening to a track with complex instrumentation. Treble here is dealt with the piezoelectric ceramic driver. The way it renders treble is actually done very well, as it adds a defined yet gentle edge to the music. It just extends very naturally. I found treble extension to be excellent. It does its job but never demands to be in the center of attention. This results in a tone that is subtly airy and smooth. The sibilant troublemakers such as cymbals and straight sizzles are not encountered on the EM10. Soundstage, when it comes to width and height, the EM10 does a good job with these two axes. It is wide and tall sounding. That allows you to imagine a soundscape that is really quite spacious. When it comes to depth and positioning, depth is great from the good amount of dynamics afforded by the dynamic driver. This contrast allows the EM10 to build different layers of music quite effortlessly. Positioning is beautiful on the EM10. While I did mention that they can benefit from a bit more bite for greater articulation, I found that on the macro level, it still does a good job when it comes to positioning. Next up, some comparisons versus firstly the Tangzu Nezha. So the Nezha also does come with a warmer tone that is somewhat similar to the EM10, but I found that the EM10 to be technically superior compared to the Nezha. I found that the EM10 to be balanced better, as the Nezha, although it does employ the use of one ESC driver inside it, but more often than not, I found them to be overwhelmed by the lushness of mids. As such, treble extension on the Nezha isn't the greatest. In the past, I recommend the Nezha if you are looking for thicker sounding mids in this price point, but now you have the EM10 which will take that spot. Next up, versus the Dita Audio Project M. Full disclosure here, I am part of the team that designed and tuned the Project M. So the Project M compared to the EM10 has more resolution and treble extension. I would say that in terms of technicalities, the Project M is better than the EM10, but it does have a vastly different tuning and tone, which is really subjective. The Project M leans more natural than warm sounding. It features sub-bass, upper mids and treble a bit more prominently. Instruments are presented with greater clarity and smoothness at the same time. Bass is tighter than the EM10 but does not have the same resonant properties that the EM10 highlights. Now the EM10 on the other hand is a warmer, more forgiving sounding IEM. It will be great for folks who want to feel your bass beats with a sweeter vocal coloration. Treble extension wise, it does not extend the same way as the Project M, but still does a good job at that. Now what I like and do not like on the EM10. Firstly, what I like. What I enjoyed on the EM10 is the dynamic and thicker tonal color on how music is rendered. I also really like how the faceplates are asymmetrical in terms of color, which makes them rather easy to remember visually. Also, the packaging is really nice. Next up, what I do not like about them. So firstly, I'm not the greatest fan of friction-based interchangeable plugs, as this is where I have terrible experiences with them because they do get loose after a while, especially when you keep changing the plugs. So I recommend if you're using them, stick to one plug and don't really change it all that often. You should be fine. But if you change them more often than not, try to do so less. So next up, some ratings. So is this a blind buy, strongly consider, try first, or one that I would give my enemy? I would say that if you are looking for a thicker sounding IEM in this price range, the EM10 is one that you should strongly consider, as it does so many things right. Also, if you want an IEM you can listen to for long listening sessions, this is one to consider, as I don't find them particularly fatiguing as well. And finally, in conclusion, I really enjoyed my time with the EM10. It is just a very pleasing IEM and should appeal to a wide spectrum of audiophiles. If you like today's review, please kindly like and subscribe right here down below. It will help me out a bunch, and if you have already done so, you are a fantastic person. With that said, I hope to see you guys soon.